7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
That's right. Come and take them here in the garage. We're back, folks. Yeah, another exciting week here in the garage. And if you want them, our guns, come and take them, baby.
I'll give you my gun, but you got to take the ammo first.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Hey, guys, we're back again, the Garage Kings, right here in the garage for another exciting week of Garage Politics. I'm Buzz Rankin.
And I am the Common Patriot.
And that's an excellent thing. And we want to remind you guys to head on over to our website there, www.garagepolitics.com. I like to always emphasize on that. Hey, if you're nostalgic, you can go to .net still. But go on over there. You can check us out at all of our different social media links, especially Rumble. That's the one we're trying to get the likes on. But, you know, they all help. So if you go to YouTube, hit like, subscribe,
wherever
whatever.
you want to go, man.
Go to Facebook, go there, voice your opinion, stuff like that, as long as you agree with us. No, I'm just kidding. You can do it either way. Just be prepared to be wrong if you're on the other side.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with me. You're entitled to be wrong if you want.
It's right. It's right. You know, we're not conceited or anything. We're just right.
Hey, special event tonight.
Special event tonight.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Got the family here.
Yeah, family's here. So we got our dad here in the garage with us. He's sitting over there. Poppy, all comfortable?
Yep, thumbs up from Dad.
Thumbs up from Dad. And we got two of our aunts here. They're in town visiting from good old Kentucky.
Yes. Yep.
So good things. We're hoping they like the garage here, and we're hoping that you all like the garage this week because I got a little segment this week we'll get into here in just a couple of seconds. And as always, Patriot, I believe, is going to have another constitutional moment for us.
We're going to keep plugging through the Constitution, man. We're going to get through the whole thing.
We're going to get there one of these days. And then, of course, we'll allow him, as we always do, because the show just wouldn't be the same unless Patriot got on his soapbox.
That's right.
But until that point, I got a segment. Hadn't been here in a while. We're going to go ahead and play it. I bet you can't guess what it is.
Get it, bro.
They said, what? Okay, those of you that have not been here for the They Said What segment, basically what it is I read a quote, and then Patriot here is going to guess whether it is someone that said it or if it's just complete crap.
Some of the stuff they actually said is just complete crap.
Well, that's that true. All right, well, let's go with it's complete fabrication.
Okay.
All right.
Go for it, man. I'm ready.
So the quote for this week is...
Okay.
Not to look at, not even to hold. Frankly, I couldn't even tell you where classified documents are kept. Is it A, Joe Biden, good old Sleepy Joe, B, Lori Lightfoot, the Chicago mayor, C, Kamala Harris, and I don't care if I said that wrong, D, complete fabrication, or E, George Santos?
Well, I got to go with Joe Biden.
Gonna go with Joe Biden.
I got to go with Joe Biden.
Gonna go with Joe Biden.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else in the garage care to guess? No? No? Joe Biden. I got two for Joe, but three for Joe Biden. I think everybody's unanimous for Joe Biden. Well, I hate to break it all to you, but it is D, a complete fabrication.
Oh, you changed it.
It's basically part of a spoof article that I found on the internet from Washington, stressing that there were 0% chance she had a mishandled sensitive information. Vice President Kamala Harris assured the American public Friday that no one had given her a single classified document. Not to look at, not even to hold. Frankly, I couldn't even tell you where top secret documents are kept, said Harris, who held a press conference to announce that even if she had access to classified government documents, she wouldn't dream in a million years of taking her work home with her, and that most of the binders in her office, they're empty anyways.
Like her head.
Pretty much. Please take comfort when I say that I have no security clearance on any level. My key fob doesn't even work most of the days. And I had to text someone on my staff to come and let me in yesterday. I stood outside the White House in the cold for 15 minutes before someone came to get me. At press time, Harris admitted that she had once taken home a roll of paper towels from the White House.
Nice.
Complete fabrication.
She is a complete moron.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's a beautiful thing. No, I figured I'd play in from last week. I didn't really have a segment, and I read some of the stuff off the internet. So I've been going more and more trying to find, because like I said, oh my gosh, everybody's so focused in on the regurgitation that the liberal media spews out all the time.
Yep.
So I try to break it by going and finding comedic value things that are a little bit more.
I told you, man. I think it's a great idea,
and and I challenge everybody to do that. Get away from the brainwashing. Go and find something fun to do that's not true, just like all of the headlines.
Take your family to the beach, play golf, drink a beer, watch TV, but watch something entertaining.
Did you say drink a beer?
Hey, well,
sweet.
Whatever.
Let's
but
try that
anything,
later.
Just don't watch the news. Don't watch
don't
ABC,
watch the news.
CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox News, any of them. Just stop
C-SPAN.
it. Network news is doing nothing but screwing it. There you go. Go for a ride. Get your Harley fired up and take it out for a ride. Whatever you got to do.
Or steal your kid's trike and ride it around the block. Who cares, man?
Don't sit around watching the network news.
Get away from the good old boob tube.
Look, 90% of what they feed you is of no benefit to you at all, and the other 10% is complete political, ideological crap. It's not useful. It's just stop. Right?
Yes.
If you need to, pull up a couple of headlines, right? You're better off grabbing some stuff off the internet, pulling headlines, and you can pull up the API and that to get an idea of kind of what's going on. Look, I basically look at the weather.
Yeah.
Traffic reports, local news. I'll pull up local news once in a while.
Right.
But I don't watch any of these because unlike when we were kids and it was Walter Cronkite and you got 30 minutes of news a night where he got on and said, okay, and that's the news, right? Remember, that was how we ended the show. And
We
that's
talked
the news.
about that just a few weeks ago. It was like, that was awesome.
Well, 30 minutes to fit in all of the news that was going on.
Around the world.
And that was it. And your local news channel, same type of thing. You had a couple of 30-minute spots or 40, whatever it was a day. And you had time to squeeze in what was going on wherever you lived. Okay, and then they were out. Now with the 24-hour news cycle, it's all commentary.
And we did talk about that a couple.
Shaping the news.
Well, and it's not news anymore. It's personal opinions and their own evaluation on what they think is happening.
Well, like
there.
you and I said, they're not reporting the news anymore. They're making news.
Yes.
They're telling you what the world is.
And they have to, because it used to be. I remember the days growing up, like you said, the nightly news.
Yeah.
30 minutes from around the world, your local, then the national anthem play, and then static.
Yeah.
When Poltergeist took over.
Well,
I'm sorry, it was a movie.
Like you and I talked, everybody know Walter Cronkite was still a lefty, okay, but he didn't have time to pontificate on the news.
He
show,
didn't give his opinion. He delivered news.
I would venture a guess that probably the last actual newsman, like a real newsman, was probably Edward R. Murrow.
Probably.
I'm not sure that there's been a decent news person. I remember
you were politically correct there. You're that news person. Didn't say news man.
Whatever. Who gives a
anchor
crap?
Dude?
Like, I prefer saying person to trying to decide who somebody, what their pronouns are. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Forget that.
Why do you always have to bring up pronouns in the garage, man? It's a terrible thing. That's good. You know what?
I'm
going to put a jar. No. I'm going to put a jar.
Day.
I'm going to put a jar in the middle of the desk, and every time you go pronouns,
wait a second,
you're pitching in money.
A guy on one of the shows today said that George Santos, something to do with him dressing up as a drag queen, doing drag queen story hour in the Congress. But the guy said he would be all for it as long as it was him reading the bills to the senators and the Congress people, so they had to read the bills.
Actually, I read something great earlier that made sense, and here's a thought to ponder on.
Oh boy. Okay.
So we all, with our jobs and everything, we're all being governed by human resources and stuff.
Right.
It's taken over, and all of the PC things that are happening.
Yes.
So someone said a comment saying, "Why is it talking about sexual things in work is offensive, yet we're allowing drag queens to teach gender identity to our children?"
Well, think about it. For years, we've been conditioned not to ask people out at work or do anything that might be considered inappropriate, but we're going to drag.
Right.
We had a
you can't go to work and go, hey, baby,
we
you
had
look good
We had a
today."
meeting recently at work, and they're on there. This lady who's involved in whatever she does with it, talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I still think should be diversity, inclusion, and equity, so that the acronym is DIE, just like it should be. And she's on there talking about how important it is because the companies that really emphasize diversity, they're just more profitable. I'm thinking, because they said we need to stay ahead and we want innovation, all that. I said, well,
Right.
that's all about diversity of thought. That's about innovation. That's about being willing to change from old processes and go to new. That has nothing to do with the color of the people you hire, the sex of the people you hire. It has nothing to do with any of that. And theirs is all about quotas, and we get the right number of gay people and the right number of women and different genders and everything like that. As long as they have that to them is diversity. And equity is all about outcomes, not about equality. It's not about everything being fair for everybody. It's about making sure that it evens out for all the various groups they've identified.
And I'll say what I've said a million times here in the garage is, we're more divided than we ever are. You want to stop all that crap? Number one, get rid of the question of race on any kind of application.
Yep.
Get rid of the answer or the question of sex on any application. And guess what? Whatever you decide to do behind closed doors, if you're gay, I don't care. That's between you, the other person behind the door, and your choice. You can answer to God and everybody else for that. I don't think it should be a political issue. Get rid of it, people, and we'll stop all this division that we got going on.
The truth, you know what? The truth about all that is really straightforward. I watched a clip today from the Jeffersons.
Oh, man.
Remember the show,
I love the Jeffersons. Grew up on it.
And Archie was on it. It was Lionel, the son. It was George's son.
Yes.
George and Wheezy's son was getting married. He was engaged and was getting ready to get married, so I guess it was the rehearsal dinner or whatever it was. Well, it turns out the girl that Lionel was marrying, her parents were a white guy and a black woman.
Right.
And George Jefferson had a cow, right? Because, the funny part was about that whole cross interaction between those two shows is that George and Archie were both humongous bigots.
Yes.
Both of them.
Absolutely.
Right? And they hated each other, but at the same time, they were the only two who could interact with each other because they hated this other stuff going on.
Yes.
And I watched it.
The one and only time they would agree.
Yes. And so I was watching that, and it just, like we've talked before, I know we've beat it to death over the year, but when we did shows back then, we laughed at all of this stuff. We were already over the hump
But you were
of
able
all
to.
of this nonsense.
Society's sense of humor died a long time ago. You can't laugh at anything. Everybody wants little. He made fun of me or called me a bad name that didn't work, and my emotions are so distraught. I need to call human resources.
We have lost the truth that comedy is there to help us laugh about the things that we have to deal with in society. And all of the comedy,
movies.
all the comedy from the 70s and that, when you go back and talk about all these great comedians, yes, they could be horribly offensive. Okay, there were lots of things to offend people about. The funny part is,
but if you were offended, you could rise up out of that seat, walk out, and didn't have to listen to it anymore. Hey,
but I know that we've talked before. There are plenty of comedians that have said things that are really, really offensive if you're a Christian.
Andrew Dice Clay.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you're listening to this comedian and you realize it's a joke. They're okay. I didn't care for that joke, but there's lots of people that don't care for other jokes. It's a joke.
But don't listen to that comedian. And that's the bottom line.
Yes, if you're really bothered by what that person says,
just don't listen to him.
Don't listen to him. And we've lost that.
Yeah, we've lost it. Anyway. And I don't think it'll ever come back. But anyways, we beat that dead horse enough. I think it's time for a little constitutional moment.
Okay, here we go. A little constitutional.
Off in the distance, the eagle flies.
People are getting tired. I am still.
The flag is waving. Approaching the mic is the common patriot. Here for this week's constitutional moment.
Now I have a narrator. So
you just kept on going. I'm trying to do it all serious stuff in case
I wasn't prepared for that. You've never done that before.
I did it last week. What are you talking about?
Did you? I didn't. I don't remember.
Yeah,
that.
don't you remember? You were like, very nice, kind of edgy.
I
like the way you dropped your voice.
I have
you sounded so radio.
No recollection
kind
of that. No,
in line.
not at all.
Go ahead with this week's constitutional moment.
Well, gee, thanks.
Teaching moment.
Article 1, Section 2,
Sweet.
Clause 3 continued. By the way, little surprise note for the future. We're not done with Clause 3 yet.
Okay.
It's a big thing. And I broke it down. Now,
Why?
what I said,
Because
remember what I said? We were going to turn them into actual moments. No more longer discussions with this. We want to. So
and folks, that is something I drilled home to him a million times because he would get on the constitutional moment.
Yeah.
And it was the equivalent of his soapbox. And I was like, dude, the whole purpose of a segment is like narrow it down, keep it small.
I got it.
But no, he would go, I got to read these 32 lines
Let me
from
finish.
section 6, 7,
Stop
8,
it.
and 12.
Cut it out.
Sure.
All right.
Go ahead.
Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Let's read through this real quick. Remember, we went after the 3/5 compromise last week. We were talking about
Right.
all right. So the actual enumeration, remember, it called for an enumeration of the population in order to determine how many representatives they would get in the House.
Yes.
The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States and within every subsequent term of 10 years in such manner as they shall by law direct. That would be the census.
Right.
Okay, so
Pretty
that's
simple.
That's enacting
Pretty straightforward
the census.
there.
Now, simple and straightforward. Amazingly enough, politicians even found a way around this wording. Okay. In Federalist 36, Hamilton said the following. Quote, an actual census or enumeration of the people must furnish the rule, a circumstance which effectually shuts the door to partiality or oppression, end quote. The Census Act of 1790, which established the first census, called for an, quote, actual accounting, end quote. As always, the Supreme Court stepped in Utah v. Evans and ruled that the framers, quote, did not write detailed census methodology into the Constitution, end quote, and therefore methods such as the one used in this case that are based on inference and not actual counting are constitutionally valid. Good old Stephen Breyer.
Okay.
Right? So this was a fairly modern ruling. Justice Thomas, in his dissent, wrote, quote, well familiar with methods of estimation, the framers chose to make an actual enumeration part of our constitutional structure. Today, the court undermines their decision, leaving the basis of our representative government vulnerable to political manipulation. So that's why I only did that part for the moment this week, because I wanted to make a quick point, right? In the Federalist Papers and in the Census Act of 1790, the framers made it perfectly clear that we wanted an actual count.
Right.
Right? Now, people will say, well, like they've done with other things, right? Well, we've got way more people. Fine. Then change the Constitution. That's what the amendment process is for. But as usual, we already know they have manipulated this in the courts, changed the way they've decided to do it so they can use statistical methodologies and guesswork to determine the actual accounting, which, as is well noted by Justice Clarence Thomas, right, leaving the basis of our representative government vulnerable to political manipulation. Now, I also thought it was worth noting that Justice Thomas said, well familiar with methods of estimation, versus what Breyer said, right, that the framers did not write detailed census methodology. Now, we go through the same kind of stuff with the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and others. One of the old, tired, and worn arguments, for example, around the Second Amendment is this idea, well, the framers, they had no idea about machine guns and all these other things. Absolute lie, first of all, because the Puckle gun, which happened to be an automatic machine gun, was alive and well during the time of the founding, right? Same thing
Which
here.
a lot of people seem to forget all the time.
Thomas makes the point. The founders absolutely knew about mathematical estimation. Do we forget that it was Isaac Newton that invented physics and all this stuff, that came up with these ideas?
Yeah, all the stuff that are the premise and
calculus
foundation of modern science was all back then.
I mean, okay, so we act like these people who make these arguments act all the time like somehow the founders, Jefferson, by the way, graduated college at the age of 16.
Right.
Okay? And I could absolutely prove to you that what went on in a university at that time, what they were expected to do to graduate, puts to shame anything that these children are expected to do when they go to college nowadays. So anyway, that was it. I wanted to make that point this week in the constitutional moment about the enumeration and the census. There'll be some more of that to finish up Clause 3 next week.
Excellent.
Well, not next week. I'll be in St.
That's
Augustine
right. Hey, good time to plug that. So,
Yes.
guys, next week, so that everybody doesn't tune in next week and go, what? No show? What happened this week? Buzz out dyeing his hair again? No.
No, I'm going to be in St. Augustine.
Patriot will
Got
be
a
out of town.
project for work.
And it was a last-minute thing. Was not planned, but that's part of life.
Yep.
Has to do something for his work. So
that's your constitutional moment this week.
awesome, man. Digging it. See, I love these constitutional moments. It gives a little chance, especially, we say it all the time. You don't know it, dig into it, read it a little bit. We show you all the time. You can get it even like a little book like this or the big one that Patriot goes by. It's so simple to get something like this and go into it. And I have, Patriot's challenged me for years, being his little brother and the annoying one, to broaden my horizons, to find out the premise of our freedom, our country, the founding, what happened. And through that, I've accepted his challenge in a lot of ways. And I do. I read these. I mean, it's small. It's simple. And and the cool thing is it gives you a chance to talk to others about it. Something that's lost in today's society.
Yes.
The ability to debate again and the ability to agree to disagree or to agree and agree. But it's a wonderful thing, guys. We challenge you as always. Dig into the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. Learn it, know it, live it, love it. It's an awesome thing.
90% of what you learn, not just about our history, not about the Constitution, not about government, 90% of what you learn about everything you know, you will learn after school. You
Absolutely.
are not going to. Do
you know how many times I've used algebra since
think about it. If you go basically through high school, you have 12 years, right, of which really the first 5 are basic general information, right? Reading, writing, learning to basics of the language and things of that nature. You're, a little bit of history, a little bit of science.
Modern society proves they don't know they don't have grammar.
So, even if we're talking about proper education, those first few years, it's not as much as you would think, right?
Right.
And so you really only got about 7 years of basic education left if you don't go to college. And when you go to college, sadly, the vast majority of our colleges nowadays really are indoctrination mills. They're not really teaching you anything. They're not, that's not entirely fair. I mean, you do learn engineering and that if you go to a point, but that's not everything. There's so much to the world. There's so much, just the little nuances you learn about history, about reading something about John Locke or about King Richard, or so much that you learn about the dynamics of that time.
Well, and the thing is, we've talked about it before. I mean, I didn't finish college. I went to college to play football, and when I couldn't play anymore, I didn't do it. But it comes down to applied applications because you can only learn so much from a book. You can only learn so much from what you read or for somebody else standing there talking to you. Everything I learned, I climbed the ladder the hard way, and I rose to the point of being an executive up in corporate, and I've made the 6 figures and everything. I've traveled around and done the job. It's amazing how many times that me, who taught myself, that took the time to pay attention when I had mentors and people willing to invest their knowledge in me, and took it then and applied it into real world applications. I surpassed people that had college degrees because I can't count the amount of times when being out on a job site or something, someone with a college degree coming out of my college degree, so I'm a contractor and stuff. Yeah. And then you get in front of them and you lay out some blueprints. They look and go, what are those little lines? And you're like, are you serious?
Well,
those are elevation points, dude. You can't do any of that on the blueprint if you don't know what elevation points are.
And yet today I hear more and more parents. I was talking to some people the other day and was surprised to hear a couple of moms that had said that what we really needed was a return to apprenticeship programs where young people who obviously weren't now, and we've said this over and over again, I shouldn't have to keep qualifying it, but just because I say that some kids do not need to go to university, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It means you got some people just flat aren't interested in it. It's not their thing.
That was me.
It's
like
not.
I just said, I went to college on a football scholarship. I wanted to play football. To play football in college, I had to be able to have grades. Once I got injured and they said, football's done, I went, pfft.
Yeah.
I didn't want college. That wasn't my thing.
So we need more people who start looking at going into trades, going back as an apprentice.
Because it's
learning
dying.
how to do these things.
It's dying. And we see it all the time because I ran my own contractor business. Patriot worked with me for a while. And the thing is, I learned that from my father and from his father that taught him. But I took the time when my dad was teaching us these things. Mm-hmm. Patriot liked reading books, and and that's why he's the knowledgeable as he is and stuff. I'm the one that was holding drywall when Dad was hanging drywall and doing stuff like that. And that was my interest, though.
Right, which is why I always got yelled at when we were doing it.
But no, now you know a fair amount now, too, because we both worked together.
Lift it up. You're done it.
Why is it crooked?
Yeah, no, I've been there and done that.
But it's a dying thing. And Patriot's right. Not everybody has to go to college.
No.
Go to a trade school, get into an apprenticeship, because I got news for you. Even as an electrician, if you're envisioning, I'm going to be an electrician, good. You got to go study under a master electrician.
Yes.
And after that master electrician, then you get out. You don't get to be a master electrician. Then you got to learn, and then you become a journeyman. And then after a journeyman is when you become a master. And that's after years of work, working under others, paying attention, applying in real world applications.
And you know, the truth is, for any young person who looks at doing that, you just be honest right up front, right? Those first several years that you're working, you get all the crappy jobs. You're doing all the cleanup, all the pickup, all the extra work
the
other guys don't want to do because they've earned the right not to, right?
But even that's a learning experience.
But the bonus there is, number one, through that process, the people you work for learn to trust you and value your commitment and your contribution.
Bam.
And guess what? It also doesn't come with any debt.
No.
Right?
No.
Going to college automatically. Loans, debt, you got to pay them all off when you're done.
Then you don't have to depend on our government that is so bankrupt it isn't funny going, oh, by the way, we'll forgive your debt.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
Well, I think with that, we know what that leads up to.
Oh,
it's time for Patriot to get on his soapbox. You like that music, don't you?
I love that music. That's much better than
He had
the
me
original
switch
one.
it up. I used to have this kind of very, almost kind of pompous stuff coming in. And he was like, no, get rid of it. I need some driving. Grabs their attention.
So
Makes it seem like I can pound on my chest when I get up on my soapbox. All right, I'll shut up now. It's your box.
So I think we've sort of transitioned into this phase where the soapbox has kind of become my segment to get into more current event stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Proud of you. You're expanding your horizons.
Well, just so much going on. You just can't pass it up, right? There are things. So the World Economic Forum is having its meeting in Davos, right? Here then, what's this all about? I mean, gosh. I had no intention originally of discussing this, but it was just so rich with dumbassery. I could not pass it up. I just couldn't.
love that terminology.
I'm
dumbassery.
sorry.
We should have a segment called Dumbassery.
We may eventually have to have a whole segment just for it. But so that everybody's clear, and I freely steal this from other shows. I'm taking this one from Glenn Beck and some other folks. The World Economic Forum is basically operating right now under the guise of the Great Reset. Okay?
Right.
Now, for anybody out there who listens to us or watches other shows, or you've got your own views and opinions, of course, as all of you do, and you think that the Great Reset is a big joke and it's complete crap, and no, that's not true, I beg to differ. Enjoy your life with that opinion, but it is actually happening.
Just watch.
Okay? And I remember being a young man in the 80s and the 90s and discussing. We had a guy across the street named Bill the plumber. Remember Bill the plumber, right? That lived across the street on 15th Street. Okay.
Yeah. Dad shaking his head. Yes.
Now, Bill, humongous conspiracy theorist. Bill
He was, wasn't he?
Oh, dear God,
my
right?
God.
I mean, everything from cheese and groceries to,
I forgot all
world
about
control.
that. You're right.
Bill was,
That's right.
yeah, with taxes and the whole bit. Now, Buzz and I have commented before how we were on the Micro Effect when we were doing the radio show back in 2008. And the gentleman that ran, Joe McNeil, the gentleman that ran the Micro Effect, I assume he still does, I would imagine.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Talked to us on several occasions, and by far and away, I would say the vast majority of the shows that were on that channel were
conspiracy theorists.
all conspiracy theorists. Well, they were. Let me put it this way: they are what the general population would call conspiracy
Yeah,
theorists.
because wasn't it an alien show that was on right after us?
I can't remember.
I think it was.
Was it right after? Or right
was-
before? Was it after?
It was right after us.
Okay, it was the aliens.
Yeah, because we were 9 to 11,
Yeah.
and at 11 o'clock was the
Well,
alien
at
show.
one
and it was-
point, well before we got to the micro effect, at one point Joe had worked with Alex Jones.
Right.
And we had heard from a few people on the show or on the station that Alex Jones was a douchebag, right? Nobody liked working with him. He was a selfish, self-centered jerk, and nobody liked him.
Their statement, not ours.
Not ours. I don't know the guy personally, so I can't tell you what I think about him. Anyway, Joe and most of his broadcasters were fairly heavy into what we sort of looked at the time as conspiracy theories. And we were considered the sort of young, fresh, super patriotic guys on the show. We were, rah-rah. We were all into it. And I still am. I'm a very patriotic person, hence the common patriot.
Now,
right?
we were quite a bit more animated back then.
Yes. Well, yes. And much harsher, actually.
I was a lot harsher. Filter gone.
Anyway, where I was going with this was I can remember hearing things like Bill the Plumber and Joe McNeil and some of the other guys and really thinking to myself, God, these guys are just,
what is
one
wrong
sandwich
with them?
short of a picnic. They're not, I don't know what's wrong with these people. Why do they get into these unproven conspiracies?
I know.
Now, that is not to say that I didn't see some credence to some of the things that were said, right? In general, right? Some of the abuse of power and the things that the government goes about doing. But I just didn't have that view that the government was inherently bad versus the idea that there were some inherently bad actors in the government. Newsflash, that's changed. So the World Economic Forum has become the repository of what we used to call the New World Order. George Herbert Walker Bush, Daddy Bush, right? And his New World Order, right? 1,000 points of light and all this other stuff. And we were warned, even while he was president after Reagan, of course, no new taxes, he blew that one. So he obviously wasn't a conservative. But that was when we really found out the truth that the Bushes, as a family in general, are globalists, right? They want the global government. They're into that whole bit, okay? But I still was never really on the bandwagon for the whole New World Order. Well, now, with the World Economic Forum and the things that are going on, and you hear these people talking about these various plans that they have under the Great Reset, and all of them lead to a simple conclusion. Global governance, the end of capitalism and private property, the impoverishment of all people and all nations with the exception of men like Soros and Klaus Schwab and the others, all the elites, right? It's really simple. And I'm telling you, look, again, don't get it from CNN and Fox News. They're going to sugar it up and make it look really pretty to you. You need to look at this, and I'm going to use this as an example. I know Buzz remembers because I was on it hot and heavy from the absolute very beginning of COVID. I was going to the CDC website, pulling data, not off their screens. Their screens, I don't know why they left this stuff available. They probably don't do it anymore, but you could download.
They've changed a lot.
You could download the spreadsheet from behind the data that was sitting there. They gave you a link to pull the data. So it was the raw data that they were using to generate the reports, right?
Right.
And right at the beginning, I started pulling it down when they started talking about the deaths from COVID. And it was very early when they started reporting where there weren't as many deaths, right?
Right.
They were reporting, and now I don't remember the exact number. I think it was May or something around that in 2020, thereabouts, whatever. And the CDC website had a big splash promoting that there were 300 deaths or something like that total. Okay?
Yeah.
And yet when I pulled the data, or they were saying, oh, no. They were saying there were 1,500 deaths. And when I pulled the data and the spreadsheet and looked at it, it said there were 680 deaths.
Right.
And I said, well, okay, it's got to be the wrong time frame. This must be, a week or two ago. It's lagging. Nope, right there in the data showed you this is for this time frame. And I said, well, that's kind of weird. Why would they? And I looked, and there's this big splash page with CDC on it and talking about the news, and it's what all the news channels were reporting. Oh, we've got 1,500 deaths from COVID. And I said, okay, I'm going to watch this. So I kept watching it, and the same thing kept happening. Week by week, they would report these numbers, and it grew increasingly. So it got further and further away from the actual truth. And I said, there's a reason for this. And that was what led me from the very beginning. Not discounting that there was actually a COVID, people were getting sick. But something was wrong, because also included in those reports were all of the death numbers from heart attack, pneumonia, stroke, you name it. It was all the causes of death they were tracking. And I looked and realized, well, wow, there's like almost no strokes, heart attacks. Where's all the pneumonia deaths? All this. And I still think to this day, they just took everything and sort of rolled. You went into the hospital, didn't really matter what you had. And then when the guy here in Florida was on a motorcycle, had a motorcycle crash, died due to trauma, but when they tested him, he had COVID. And they listed it as a COVID death. No, it wasn't. He died from trauma from a motorcycle accident. And so that was anecdotal, but when I put those, or circumstantial evidence, but when I put those together, I said, they're lying. They're lying to us for a reason. And I say that to go back to the World Economic Forum and say, there's a reason why these people keep lying. They keep telling us things that are not true. And I want everybody, I don't care if you're a leftist or a conservative, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, male, female, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. I'm not interested in anything else other than your brain for a minute. I want you to stop and ask yourself, why? Why would government agencies, non-governmental organizations, why would these people spend so much time lying to us? Whether it's COVID or climate change or disasters or whatever it happens to be. Why? What good is it for them to tell you these untruths? Well, because they want you to be scared. They want you to be in compliance. Again, COVID is the instruction manual here, because they literally did everything they could by misreporting deaths to scare the hell out of the general population of this country and every other country for that matter.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you people know that they literally welded human beings into their apartments in China? That's crazy. Welded them into their apartments so they could not get out and spread the virus and let them die. If they had no food or anything, okay, And they lockdowns in Italy and other countries. This was crazy, right? This was an exercise. COVID was the opportunity for the Great Reset crowd to find out how far can we push them.
It still is.
Yes. How far can we push them? How much of the lie will they swallow? Okay. When we tell them there's an emergency, can we depend on them to be compliant?
Well, because I still remember when they first announced about COVID. Of course, it's coming out and they're announcing COVID, because it's funny, when I started my new job.
Yeah.
It was the 6th of March,
yes,
2020. 7 days later,
yes,
everything got shut down.
Yeah.
Now, I still remember, because I was a little bit concerned. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I think all of us were. This is before we really knew.
Yes.
But I remember going to the CDC, to their website, and reading about masks.
Yes.
And how the CDC says the wearing of masks should be by individuals who are ill or have symptoms to help prevent the spread of any bacteria or viruses.
And it should read to mitigate, because it doesn't stop.
But here's the thing. It said to help prevent the spread. Okay. So at first they had it right, but it was those that were sick wear them.
Yes.
Halfway through the pandemic, CDC changed that to everyone should wear a mask to help from getting it. Yes. My doctor said it best, and I agree with him. He said masks, because he's had people argue with him, well, you wear masks when you're in an operating room. Mm-hmm. Yes, to keep from spitting into your open body.
Yes.
He said, if you think a mask stops, now we know, because we were contractors, we painted.
Yes.
We used to wear respirators with cans on it.
Heavy-duty masks.
Heavy-duty and everything. And still at the end of the day, even with those and changing them out halfway through the day and everything, you had it around here, and when you blew your nose, you had paint particles. And guess what? Paint particles are millions of times larger than a virus. Yeah. So my doctor said, if you think that a mask is helping you, go in a closed closet where there's no ventilation, cut loose a fart, and if you can smell it, the virus is going to get you.
So all of this lying to us, and I watched a clip today of the Pfizer. I don't know if it was the CEO or the COO. I think it was the CEO of Pfizer who was there at the World. And these two guys caught up with these two independent journalists, asking him, "Do you owe the public an apology? You said that the virus, that the vaccine was 100% effective, 95% effective, 90% effective, 80% effective. Blah, we were told it was going to stop the spread, prevent transit, and it doesn't stop transmission. The vaccine actually, there are higher rates of infection now amongst people who've had the vaccine than against people who have gotten natural immunity by getting COVID and getting through it." Right? This guy wouldn't answer a single question, not one question. Wouldn't stop, wouldn't talk. Because they lied to us.
Of course.
He said, well, are you going to address these sudden deaths? All of these young, healthy people dropping dead daily, dropping dead daily. This just doesn't happen. It's not like there's precedent for this. So anybody who wants to stand there and tell me, well, this happens all the time. Bull crap. It happens all the time.
Way to filter yourself, bro. Good job.
It doesn't. I'm sorry. At the beginning of it, I was even, sort of looking at it like anyone else going, well, okay. I tend to look at things now and think, well, we're getting an awful lot of reporting. We get more reporting than we used to, so maybe things just look worse now. But you can't tell me that this wouldn't have been front page news any time in our lives that this many, especially athletes, young athletes, at peak condition. And we're not talking about people that are roided out and everything like that, because that would have been a headline if that was the deal. They're talking about gymnasts and swimmers and baseball and football and soccer and all kinds of young, just dropping dead. Now, there's something to that. There's a problem there. And I'm not faulting the fact that we were all in a hurry and we had to have something and people panicked. Okay, I can live with the idea that, well, we made a mistake. Pull it off the market. Okay. I think we can all look at that and everybody could say, all right, we're just going to give you a mulligan on that one because we all sort of got into the national panic about it. But no, they're not even being honest now. When they know full well that what they've done is hurting people and they're not going to stop it. So
I got you sidetracked again, didn't I?
No. So let's talk about farmland. Now, I did not go into all of the things that the World Economic Forum is planning because governments, our government, Canada, European governments, others are all getting involved in this too. It's a United Nations deal that they're trying to do. This great reset, this whole thing, and the date, the year 2030 keeps coming up. They are pushing for this transition, this great reset to be fully completed by 2030. Okay? I listened to a guy give a speech at the World Economic Forum and or leading up to it where he said that by 2030, it was the goal of the World Economic Forum that no human being should take more than one short-haul airline flight every 2 years. A short-haul flight means a flight, say, for example, from Florida to California, in your country, a short-haul flight, okay? They said their stretch goal was that no human being would take more than one short-haul flight every 3 years.
That's ridiculous.
Now, we'll come back to that point after I get through this. Let's talk about farmland, right? We all know about farming. We know something about it, and we weren't necessarily farmers. I couldn't run a farm, but I mean, we understand the general principles.
If you tried, you could.
Europe and other areas are destroying or forbidding the use of more than 30% of usable farmland. Now, it's happening in Europe. It's happening in other areas around the country, all right? You saw it was in the Netherlands, right? Was it Netherlands or Norway, or which country was it that was telling they couldn't use nitrogen fertilizer? This is something that's beginning to spread.
Honestly, I don't remember. It is one of those two.
Nitrogen fertilizer, by the way, the advent of nitrogen fertilizer increased the output of farmland by 50% plus. Okay, you saw more than a 50% increase in food that was grown with nitrogen-based fertilizers. And now they're trying to say, nope, no nitrogen. And they're giving all kinds of reasons. Oh, it's bad for the environment. Oh, people can use nitrogen-based fertilizer to make bombs. I'll make a note about that one here in a minute, too. Canada is on board with this destruction and removal of farmland. The United States is moving this way. Chinese.
Actually, I just read, since you did it, I went ahead and went online to look on ban on nitrogen fertilizer.
Yes.
It's already happening here in Florida.
Yes.
It's already Tampa Bay. Let's see. Who else? Lee and Charlotte counties, along with Sanibel.
Yes.
They were banned effective June 1st.
Hold on to that for a second. because we're gonna put a little line through that and connect several of these pieces in a minute.
I'll
all
leave
right?
that up there for you.
So the United States is moving in this direction. Do you know that the U.S. is allowing China to buy massive amounts of farmland?
I know.
And do you know in many
I couldn't
cases,
believe that when I read that.
in many cases, these people who actually have connections to the Chinese Communist Party are buying huge farms near, guess what? United States Air Force bases. Chinese citizens buying American farmland near U.S. Air Force bases. What? In what frigging universe is that actually a good idea ever? Ever. Anyway, not only that, guess who else? Bill Gates is buying farmland like it is his new favorite toy.
Oh, I know.
Right?
It's like, seriously.
This is
come
one of the
on,
guys who wants
man.
us to eat bugs, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay?
But you can dip them in chocolate.
You've also got major corporations that are doing the same thing. They're buying big chunks of farmland. They're trying to put farmers... And think about it. You eliminate nitrogen fertilizer. Farmers can't produce the same yields as they were producing. Now they make less money. Guess what they can't pay? The mortgage. Guess what they lose? The farm. Guess who buys it?
China.
Bill Gates, China, corporate... Right? This is a dangerous cycle that is
Joe
being set up.
Biden. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
So... They're calling the nitrogen fertilizer a pollution issue, okay? But it fits hand in hand with their pushing bugs. So think about it for a second. You cut nitrogen fertilizer, you buy up more and more farmland that basically is off the market now. Now, I have my own theory that they buy all that farmland so they then use it to still raise cows and real food for the elites because they're not going to eat bugs.
No.
Okay?
No.
And it makes sense with what they're doing. Biden is planning to cut 30% of grazing land. Now, I don't know if you know or not, but many cattlemen, many ranchers who raise cattle and everything like that, they've got ranches that are adjacent to public land, state parks, state reserves, and stuff like this. And it's always been allowed that they could graze on that land. Their cattle were allowed to graze on that land.
Right.
Biden's going to stop that. Mm-hmm. That means you're going to lose this grazing. What happened? Again, cattle start dying. You can't sell as many cattle. You can't raise as many cattle. You can't make as much money. You're going to lose your ranch. Okay.
Right.
But he's looking to 30% of grazing, logging, and farming land. Okay. And I'm sure now that's by 2030. Remember that date, 2030. All this stuff is going to happen by 2030 is what they're saying to us. Think about it when they've been talking about cars. California wants all combustion engines outlawed by, say it with me, 2030. Okay?
I had forgot what you said.
So these people want to destroy our farmland, prevent us from using fertilizers, reduce our food supply, and then they want us to eat bugs and weeds. There's one of the guys at the Economic Forum that said
we're going to eat weed?
We could all learn to eat bugs and weeds.
Weeds,
right?
Not weed.
I'm not kidding you guys.
Okay.
Look, I don't care what they do in Davos. I don't particularly care what they do in Europe.
Seaweed for
that's
supper.
Up to them. But I'm going to tell you right now, and
beef.
I'm beginning to approach the point where we're going to have to start talking honestly with each other about the fact that these politicians are not listening to us.
Do you think they're going to quit eating meat?
No, they're not. The people who are telling us what we can do with our land. Look, they've been telling us for years now. You can't. Well, you got a wetlands on your land. I'm censoring myself again. I have really mean things to say to these people. Absolutely not 1 ounce of authority. This is why we do the constitutional moment, and we're going to have to get through it so that everybody can start understanding this, and then we can start talking about some of the other stuff that attaches to it. But there is not 1 ounce of authority for our federal government to tell us what to do with our land in that sense, to tell us what we're going to eat, how we can stay cool or warm. This stuff is completely out of control. Completely out of control. They are now endeavoring to control literally every single aspect of our lives. And they're doing it with impunity. They are doing it in Washington, and they are sitting there and laughing at us because in their minds, and actually sometimes verbally, they're basically saying, what are you going to do about it?
What?
Come on, tell me. I mean, Biden actually said to people, I don't know why everybody's worried about keeping a gun. If you think that that's so that you can stop tyranny, if you're going to fight the United States, you're going to need some F-15s. This is the president of the United States who says this about the American people.
Well, it was on his teleprompter.
Well, and we kind of went over this too. I told you when I was younger, again, I sort of thought, they shouldn't be able to limit our firearms, right? But I also sort of thought, well, nobody needs a tank or an F-15 or anything. Yeah, bull crap. We need them, and we ought to be able to own them. I told Sean, the only thing that I'm basically okay with is that we have some non-proliferation on the nukes, right? I'm okay with that.
Yeah. You can limit that all you want.
Well, I don't think we need American citizens running around with nuclear warheads.
No.
But if you can afford to buy an Abrams tank or an A-10 Warthog or an F-15 or an F-22, you ought to be able to buy it. Hell, we're selling it to third world dictators who are killing people left and right. We're worried about an American citizen owning it? Anyway. So that was the little piece on farmland. Let's talk about climate change for a minute.
Let's.
Everything these people do is tied to climate change. Now, I'm going to give you some examples here, and I promise you I didn't get anywhere close to getting through all the examples. This goes back, it starts in 1967. I will be 56 in July. That means for a bare minimum of 56 years, these people have been lying, fear-mongering, and telling us things that are simply not true. And every time it's proven false, they double down and tell another lie bigger than the last one. And what's more, we have members of our society, fellow citizens, men and women in our country who are big enough idiots to continue believing it. And I'm sorry, look, I said, I told a couple of people early on, I don't want to get to a point where I'm picking on people.
Right.
It's not that I want to pick on people, but folks, you got to get your head out of your rectum and start paying attention. This stuff can't keep continuing.
You got doctors that can give you a rectal exam. You don't need to do self-examination.
I had a guy laughing the other day. For years, the way I've referred to it is I've said that people who do that have cranial rectal inversion. And some guy goes, "Oh, that's hilarious."
Yeah,
I'm
but it never
using
gets
that.
old hearing it because I've heard you say it a million times.
Everything the elites do in some way is connected to climate change. It used to be cooling, right? And now if you lived through the 70s, 60s, and 70s, you know that at one point, we were heading for an ice age. It's going to freeze, right? I mean,
Now we're global warming.
Yeah, well, I was a kid in the 70s. Well, you're going to see
And we can see that with the coldest snaps coming across the country.
It was an ice age. It was overpopulation. It was peak oil. All right. We had a lack of resources. Then it was global warming. Every single prediction the alarmist left has made ever has been 100% wrong. Every time. They've been wrong every time. And yet they never recant. They never apologize. They never go, "Oh, boy, I really blew it on that one. I was totally wrong." Never.
For one of these weeks when you're off on this about the climate change, and I need to have for the show the clip from George Carlin.
Oh, dude, that's
we need to play that on the show one week because
you got to be careful because it's copyrighted and they won't let us. We're not allowed to play that.
Oh, we can't.
I don't.
It's on YouTube.
Check it.
It's on YouTube.
But it might be with.
Let me see. I'll look what our limitations are because it would be great to play that clip because boy does he let the idiots have it. So, anyways,
how many of you remember?
I do. Oh wait,
not everybody does, but there was. And I'm thinking it was the 90s, 80s. I think it was the 90s. I'm pretty sure it was when they started sort of transitioning over to global warming. Yeah, and there was this temperature chart that showed temperatures and straight up. And it was called the hockey stick. They referred to it as the hockey stick, right? It was like, the temperatures are just going through the roof. And that report originated in East Anglia University, right? And it was found out a little bit later that what they had done had left out a period in the, 1700s, 1500s, I forget exactly, called the Little Ice Age, with a big drop in temperatures, right? It was like the coldest period for a long time. They just ignored this whole 300-year period called the Little Ice Age, which changed the average temperatures and made them go much higher. If they'd left that in, it would have evened things out. Anyway, you can go look it up. You just do a search for the Little Ice Age in East Anglia.
And it was in the 90s.
I think,
yeah, because the last time the hockey stick featured prominently was in the third assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Yes, UN used
in
it all over the place.
2001. And then they found out it was complete and utter
They had to give it up.
BS
Now, it's funny because
it's
now
garbage.
you read these commentaries and they're going, "Yeah, we really got nailed with that. We didn't realize there was this bad information in the report, and we've got really serious people checking that stuff now. We got those numbers right on. Bull crap." So let's talk about some failures, all right? In the Salt Lake Tribune, 17th November, 1967, I would have been 5 months old, right? Paul Ehrlich. Now, I want you to remember this the name Paul Ehrlich. This guy has been involved around looking at close to virtually every really crappy prediction they have made for decades, right? This guy wrote a book called The Population Bomb, and he claimed that the world was going to be overpopulated and we were all going to die, and it was, But anyway, in the Salt Lake Tribune in 17 November 1967, Paul Ehrlich told us it was already too late. Now, here's the other thing I want you to remember as we're going through these. I want you to remember, they always tell us, right, either it's too late or if we don't act now, it's too late. Everything is hyperbole. Everything is, you have to fix it now. You got to fix it or we're all going to die. Everything is a dire prediction. It's never, hey, folks, we need to pool our resources and come up with some new technology that makes life better for us, because that's what mankind has done for centuries. We continue to come up with new technology to solve problems, right?
Right.
So he said it was too late, and there would be, quote, now this was in 67, there would be, quote, dire famine by 1975, right? Carter was still in office in 75.
Are we still waiting on that one?
Or no, Ford was in office in 75. Carter got elected in 76, right? Okay.
48 years ago.
He claimed the population of the U.S. was already too big in 1967. Okay? All right, so hold on to that. He said that we needed to make birth control involuntary, and we needed to add sterilizing agents in staple foods and drinking water. This is in 1967, folks. We're not talking about the Middle Ages. We're talking about a man, okay, who was a scientist. All right, who claimed that he had this special knowledge because he was a scientist and he wanted to have mandatory birth control and sterilize people in the food and the water. All right? Ehrlich noted that experts keep saying the world food supply will have to be tripled to feed the 6 or 7 billion people they expect to be living in the year 2000. He went on to say, quote, that may be possible theoretically, but it is clear that it is totally impossible in practice. Now, this guy wrote this in 1967 and said that there was no way we could feed 6 or 7 billion people by the year 2000, that it was not feasible in practice. Last time I checked, I think the numbers for population on the planet right now are somewhere close to 7 billion people.
Something like that.
Right? And yes, we do have pockets of poverty and starvation and famine. We've had that, if I checked last time, for the entire course of human history. Anyway, he was obviously wrong. It wasn't impossible in practice, but be that as it may. Now, so we go to 1969, the New York Times. Paul Ehrlich again. Gee, where did I hear that name before? He wanted immediate action, folks. Quote, by the time we have enough evidence to convince people, you're dead. Okay, that's what he said in 1969. He said, quote, we must realize that unless we are extremely lucky, everybody will disappear in a cloud of blue steam in 20 years. Now, so if by my calculations, he said this in 1969, that would be 1989. That's when I graduated
That's 20
college.
years.
Now, last time I checked, I'm still here. I'm pretty sure I don't recall a news story where everybody disappeared in a cloud of blue steam.
Alternate universe.
Yeah, Anyway, he said on a coffee break, the situation is going to get continuously worse unless we change our behavior. Now, here again, here we go. We're all going to disappear in a cloud of blue steam in 20 years. We're all going to die in 20 years. Now, do any of you remember a news story where this prominent scientist, Paul Ehrlich, came on TV in 1989 and said, you know what? I know I predicted we were all going to be gone, but I was wrong. No, because it never happened, right? And that was in the New York Times, mind you. Okay, let's go to the Boston Globe in 1970, a year later, 16th April 1970. A new ice age by the 21st century. Quote, air pollution may obliterate the sun and cause a new ice age in the first third of the next century. So by now, 21st century, we should have had a new ice age.
But it's the first third.
But that was 1970, so they were basically saying...
But it's the first third.
Yeah, well, they were basically saying, 30 years from then, right, in 2000.
But it's the first third.
Well, yeah, whatever.
We still got 10 more years.
But what
of
are we
the first
predicting
third.
now? Are we predicting an ice age now?
No, that we're going to incinerate into a giant burst of a ball of flame, and everybody's going to burn to death. Oh my God, the sun!
This scientific dork, James P. Lodes Jr., warned that demands for electric power generation would, quote, boil dry the entire flow of the rivers and streams of the continental United States. Now, this is a scientist, folks. He further said, oh, this one is beautiful. I love this. Real quick show of hands. Do we all know how the planet produces oxygen? Plants and trees, right?
Yes.
Grass, everything that's green, photosynthesis pulls in carbon dioxide and spits out oxygen, right? Okay. So, again, this dork said that by the next century, the consumption of oxygen in combustion processes worldwide will surpass all processes which return oxygen to the atmosphere. So in other words, all of our combustion processes would eat up so much oxygen that all of the plants on the planet couldn't produce enough oxygen.
And yet the
to
funny
replace
thing
it.
is now, as opposed to even colonial times, there are more trees globally than there ever has been.
See the dirty little secret, you're exactly right. This thing about logging all the time. Now, I understand the difference between old growth and new growth and all this, but there are more forested acres on this continent now, today, than the day that Columbus landed in the West Indies. Right? Now, this guy was a scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, making these claims about all of the oxygen disappearing. This is a scientist. Now, and I say that because what did we hear all through the pandemic, right? Follow the science. Don't deny the science. You must listen to the science, particularly Anthony Fauci.
Why? They've been wrong a million times.
Well, this is the thing, right? See, this is where we have said before, this is the news media's job. There should be a newsman on every corner going, they've kind of said this before, guys, and they were wrong. It should be just common sense. You should be out there. But no, they're ideologically aligned with him. So he said we could prevent this through 3 items: population control, less wasteful standard of living, major technological breakthroughs in the way that man consumes Earth resources, right? Redlands, California, 6th October 1970. Guess who's back again? Paul Ehrlich.
Ooh, look at that.
He said no real action has been taken to save the environment. The oceans will be as dead as Lake Erie in less than a decade. He claimed that DDT, remember DDT, that was going to kill all of us. He claimed that DDT in 1970, it's in our fatty tissue, it's reached levels high enough to create brain damage and cirrhosis of the liver.
Yeah, yet it used to keep away all the mosquitoes that carried all the viruses and crap.
Now remember, remember this number. He said America will be subject to water rationing by 1974 and food rationing by 1980. Okay? Let's go to 1 year later, 1971, the Washington Post, okay, this Dr. S.I. Rasool, a member of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, that's NASA for those of you who don't like acronyms, and Columbia University. He said, quote, in the next 50 years, the fine dust man constantly puts into the atmosphere by fossil fuel burning could screen out so much sunlight that the average temperature could drop by 6 degrees. Quote, if sustained over several years, 5 to 10, unquote, this could trigger an ice age. This was also published in the journal Science.
That would have been 2021, by the way, folks.
Right. Dr. Gordon F. McDonald, a scientist, member of Nixon's 3-man Council on Environmental Quality, called Rasool a, quote, first-rate atmospheric physicist. And his conclusions were in line with those that he himself and others had made. These scientists all back each other. These are asinine claims. It's easy to laugh at them now, but these people were making these dire claims at the time, trying to scare the crap out of everybody because they wanted control. Brown University, I read this was a letter they sent to the, I believe it was to the Nixon administration. It was 1972, so it would have been Ford, I guess. Now, this was funny. It was the Department of Geological Sciences, not atmospheric science, geological. Geological deals with rocks and dirt. Okay? Anyway. So the Brown University, 42 top American and European investigators, including George J. Kukla and R.K. Matthews, should have been George J. Kooky, but and Matthews was the chairman, called for, quote, global deterioration of climate by an order of magnitude larger than any hitherto experienced by civilized mankind very soon. Okay? The Guardian in 1974, that's a British newspaper, called for an ice age. Time in 1974 said, the headline read, "Another ice age?" UPI, United Press International, I believe that is, 1974, gas pares away the ozone, great peril to life. Guys, remember the ozone, the hole in the ozone? Right?
Yeah.
It was going to kill us all, right?
Yeah. And that was back in
Hey,
74.
newsflash, it repaired itself. It's okay.
Here we are-
NASA,
here we are
again.
almost 50 years later.
NASA in 1974, Antarctic ozone hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the New York Times, we're into 1976 now. Jimmy Carter is the president. He's the peanut farmer.
Would you like some peanuts?
I voted for him in third grade. It was the last time I voted for a Democrat. 1976, Stephen Schneider said, food running out and insufficient hedge against future famines. Now we started talking about famines, okay, again. Mind you, we were supposed to be in dire famine by 1975, according to Paul Ehrlich.
Well,
This
and
is
that's
1976.
that's because all the food would fall through the hole in the ozone.
And let's not forget that in 1970, Ehrlich had predicted, we are now in 1976, in 70, Ehrlich had also predicted that we would be in water rationing by 1974.
That's because it all froze up.
Yeah. Noblesville Ledger, 9th April 1980, right? Ronald Reagan is now in. Now, remember, everybody remembers this scare. Acid rain was going to kill us all, right? Acid rain. Raymond Robinson from Canada predicted this. We were going to have acid rain. The AP, Associated Press, 6 September 1990, 10 years later, acid rain, not a problem. New York Times, 5th January 1978. This is when they said there was no end in sight for the 30-year cooling trend.
How's that possible when in the 90s we started global warming?
Well, but according to NASA, there is a slight warming trend since 1979. Now, they made this other claim in 1978, no end in sight for 30-year cooling trend.
Right.
But according to NASA, there was a slight
year later.
warming trend
A
since
year later.
1979.
But there's no end in sight. We're going to cool forever until we warm up
The
in
Miami
79.
News, by the way, just as a side note, I remember the year we moved to South Florida, Miami. It was actually, I was just reading an article about it. Not in Miami, it snowed 3 inches. We were in Fort Lauderdale.
remember that.
The
I remember
teacher
that.
took us outside. I was in 4th grade. They took us outside because it was snowing. Now, it was no big deal to me because I'd just come from Kentucky.
All that global warming falling out of the sky in the form of
But the
frosty
Miami
little
News,
flakes.
24th June 1988. Now remember, we just had 78 and into the 80s and all this. 1988, James Hansen, more droughts likely. Okay? Now they started talking about this. There was going to be warming. We have droughts. Now, here's a note for you. The last really dry year in the Midwest was 1988, with recent years record wet.
Wow.
Okay? Folks,
Do you see a pattern here?
look, the list goes on and on. We didn't even get into all the new global warming stuff, right?
We'll make a prediction.
Al
We're
Gore,
wrong.
Al
We'll
Gore
make a new
told us.
prediction.
Al Gore told us the seas were going to rise and this was going to happen. None of it has come true. None of it, and they just keep pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. I've said all of that to say this, right? The global elite claims of overpopulation. I remember the peak oil thing. Remember all the gas lines in 76 and 77, all that stuff going on. Remember Jimmy Carter telling everybody, well, just turn your thermostat down and wear a sweater, right? All of this stuff that the left, I don't care what guys they take on. I don't care who they work for. I don't care if they're in Davos or Washington, D.C. or Berlin or where the hell they are. It's always the same thing. They want to scare you. They want to be in control. They want you to cede control to them, and they want you to do it quietly and comfortably. The World Economic Forum is saying to people that by 2030, you will own nothing. There will be no private property. Hello, Karl Marx. And you will be happy about it. We're going to give you a mincome. We're going to give you benefits. We're going to give you housing. You're going to have public transportation. A little side note. I'm not even going to read through the rest of this other stuff for a second, but electric cars. It's not about what you think it is. They don't want us in electric cars. They don't. Think about the average cost of an electric car right now. You're not going into an electric car.
No.
What they want is they want to ban combustion engines, right? Because they're easy to maintain. They make it very easy for us to be mobile, go and do whatever we want. They want petroleum gone. They want fuel gone. They want to take care of this stuff because then what's going to happen? Think about that air flight. One air flight every 3 years. The point is for you to be where you're supposed to be. So I hope you're happy wherever it is you're living, because that's where you're staying. You're not going to get in a car and go where you want if these people get their way. You're going to live where you live. You're going to do the job you're told to do. You're going to be happy about it. And you're going to take what they give you and suck it up, and that's going to be your life. Now, I don't care if you disagree with me politically. I don't care if you don't like my views on conservatism or capitalism or anything else.
Nope.
But I can only imagine, and I firmly believe, that despite all of our differences across the country, people who may or may not catch this show at some time, that we all want freedom. Now, we might call it something different at various times, right? But I know that the people I've met in the course of my lives, even those who didn't necessarily agree with everything I said, wanted to do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. Folks, it's called freedom. It's your right. It's your birthright as an American citizen to be free. Our founders fought and bled and created the Constitution to enshrine those rights given to us by God so that we could live free of government control. Now, along the way, we've made a lot of mistakes, and we have forgotten that ultimately that's our responsibility. Ronald Reagan, it's right there on my wall, all right? Freedom is never more than one generation away from destruction. It's not given to us in the bloodstream. It must be taken care of and fought for. And I paraphrased a little bit, but that's the bottom line. You're entitled to it. It's something that we are born having in our control, but you must defend it. You have to take care of it. If you do not defend freedom, it will die. And right now, folks, I'm going to tell you, it's a scary thought. We are on the verge of watching our freedom, our liberty, our heritage die. And everybody's laughing about Davos, and I know it's all fun and games, but it's really not. So you better start acting and voting and getting involved in what's going on in this world like it means something to you, because it does. And if we don't fix it, we're all going to end up on our knees in slavery. And that's my soapbox.
And it's time for shout-outs 3 minutes ago. Just kidding. You were going. I didn't want to stop you.
I had to finish that.
So I had to do a shout-out this week. Actually, I came across an interesting story. Big shout-out to, because remember I said, now, of course, we always give our normal shout-outs, but I was trying to find good in society.
Yes.
And I said we were going to do it. So big shout-out to Buffalo native Jay Withy, and I'm hoping I'm saying his name proper. So Jay Withy, and this happened back around the holidays.
Yes.
But he rescued 24 people from a blizzard.
Oh, wow.
Up there. And what he did, so basically he got stuck out there. It was like 8 o'clock, got stuck out on the highway.
On the thruway?
And they were trapped in their cars.
Yeah.
So Mr. Withy here basically went and started retrieving these people from the cars. He broke a window out of a local school and took them in there to get them into shelter so that they had bathrooms used and everything.
Yeah.
He left a note that said, "To whom it may concern, I'm terribly sorry about breaking the school window and for breaking into the kitchen. We got stuck at 8 p.m. Friday and slept in the truck with 2 strangers, just trying not to die. There were 7 elderly people also stuck out and out of fuel. I had to do what I had to do to save everyone and get them shelter and food and a bathroom. Merry Christmas," he concluded, signing the note only with the name Jay. So he was identified and everything. And NFL Hall of Famer Thurman Thomas, love Thurman Thomas, gave him 2 Super Bowl tickets to this year's Super Bowl. So big shout out to you, Jay. Society,
awesome.
That's what we need. More people that get back to being human. We tell you every week on The Garage, we challenge you. Quit watching all the brainwashing crap. Quit going out there holding grudges. Quit pointing the finger and belittling people and shouting at them and yelling at them. Be human again. Show some compassion. Show some love. You'll be surprised how it changes you in your life. And you know what? Continuing with the shout-outs, God bless every single one of our soldiers. Because of you, we have the freedom that we do here in this country. Huge shout-out to our police, to our first responders, our paramedics, our firefighters, all of you. Folks, we're not saying that your job doesn't matter elsewhere, but these are people that every day they put on a uniform. They put their lives, they push their families, they push their own lives aside to help others.
Yep.
So our shout-outs, our love, our supports, and our prayers always go out to them.
Yep.
So with that said, thank you all for tuning in once again. Don't forget, check us out at www.garagepolitics.com. And until then, we will see you in 2 weeks
In the garage.
in the garage.